Yes, it's Let's Talk call-in radio. And this is Let's Talk, getting to the root causes of important issues of the day. This on-the-air community forum believes your voice matters and welcomes all thoughts and views without judgment. Please join today's conversation by calling and joining 415-663-8492 or 8317. We have two lines open in the studio today. My name is Paul Raffel. There's Charles Schultz over there. There's Shelley Rugg over there.
Hello.
And Stephen
I've made
Hurwitz
it one more week.
Fantastic. One more week. And please do call in 415-663-8492. And when you call in, you'll hear a little buzzy noise as I put you in the system. Please hang on. And then when you hear me say, caller, you're on the air, turn down your radio. Give us the name of your choice, and please keep the language clean. Do no swearing, no cussing allowed. And
But what are we talking about?
well, I'm glad you asked, because this week we're talking about microevolution. What is microevolution, you might say? Well, might say. You might say.
I might say that.
I wouldn't, but go on. What might you
Paul,
say?
what is microevolution?
Well, I read this fascinating article actually about a month ago about how they're tracking now actual evolutionary genetic changes in, especially in urban environments of species that were rural species, as all species were, including us, and how over the past couple of centuries things are changing, and they're finding out that evolution actually happens quite rapidly as opposed to what Darwin surmised so long ago, that it always took a long time. It apparently in
4 days.
4 days. Have you microevolved?
A couple of
over
years,
the
a couple
week?
of generations of these animals.
Example?
Well, an example. There are examples. Let's see. I wrote some down. But there's a lizard, an early lizard from Puerto Rico, which when it got to cities, because of glass and concrete smoother surfaces, this is a tree lizard. So it had sort of short legs and fairly sticky feet, but exposed to a concrete environment and a glass environment, it evolved with longer legs and stickier feet. So it could hang on. And you can see there's actually a little video comparing the two running along a slick painted surface. And the little forest lizards kind of go like that, and the city lizard just goes zoom, just flies right through.
I remember an example from the English Industrial Revolution, which was about moths.
Yes.
Where in a couple of generations, these moths had changed color so that they would be a dark gray or a darker gray to fit in with the soot.
The soot that was coating everything, all the trees. Yeah, this was an oak moth that was a light gray, and it turned dark. And then when, as the skies cleared, and after the post-industrial revolution world, it started changing again.
Was this just after Labor Day? It stopped wearing a light moth. It became just dark colors. I don't know.
Yes, it was a fashion choice.
It was a moth fashion choice.
That's right.
So yeah, there's a lot of instances of this. My favorite one, of course, from the UK, hedgehogs whose defense was to curl up. If they were threatened, they would just curl into a ball. And when you do that on a road, so they actually evolved, certainly behaviorally, and I think they found that it's actually passed down. They can put them in a different situation. They can take babies, put them in another situation away from a road, and they'll still not curl up.
It'd be nice if deer would get a little smarter when it comes to the roads.
Well, I don't know. I think
I've
or
never
maybe
hit
it's
one.
the people that need to get smarter, huh? Slow down, pay attention.
well. So now there's the thing about there's the question about that if evolution happens this quickly in some species anyway. Certainly
What's
not
happening
all
to
of them,
us.
because
Right.
there's a lot of them are going extinct every day. But what does that portend for the future? For example, for the human species, will we be able to adapt, or have we forgotten how to adapt in our little urban bubbles?
Well, call us 663-8492. Can you think of, and I'm asking everybody here as well as the listeners who should call in, can you think of ways in which humans have shown some microevolution?
Well, humans really can change their genetic makeup very quickly.
Yeah, earlier today I was a Thai girl, about 14 years old, and what do you mean? Steve?
Good
Sorry.
job, good
Wow.
job. Well, it turns out there's something called microbiomes, and they affect everything about us. Really, they're maybe 6 pounds of them in our body. They're these little things that inhabit the gut, and they are minute. They're bacteria and fungi and stuff, and they have the ability to actually affect our health, our genetic makeup, and they really depend on what we eat. And you can change your genetic makeup rapidly by changing your diet.
And is this the sort of thing that causes cancer in people, or
All kinds of disease.
It actually can prevent cancer. It can serve to. It can regulate trigger points in your body. Cancer, obesity, influenza, all sorts of things are affected by this, and it can actually serve as protection. If people are interested, Scientific America had an excellent article on that, and so did the American Society of Microbiology. And I'll just read something from them. Several studies found that the difference in gut microbiome biodiversity among vertebrates correlates with their evolutionary history.
Say that again now.
please?
Okay. Since I read it once, it'll be second time I'll be easy. This is from the American Society of Microbiology. Several studies found that the difference in gut microbiome biodiversity among vertebrates correlates with their evolutionary history. They say that natural selection is not required to evolve traits.
Are we talking about the microbiome evolving,
we are.
or the
No.
humans?
Humans, by influenced by the microbiome.
Well, there are people who say that the species is diverging. I mean, the people that have access to all of the best medicine, all the best foods, all the best this, that, from very early age, and so did their parents, and so did their grandparents. And then there are people who have had terrible access to food and health care and clean water, and that is sort of building up across generations, so that, we're becoming sort of two species. People like us, who are going to live, if Ray Kurzweil's right, forever and ever, and people who die, quite young of preventable diseases from environmental, toxins.
Our damaged food source. There's a film premiering tonight in San Rafael called Secret Ingredients.
Oh, yeah.
And it is specifically looking at the issue of our food source in America, well, throughout the world, and how damaged it is, and how you can really see a correlation between diet and health, and so diseases, all kinds of diseases, diabetes,
That's right.
obesity,
That's right.
Alzheimer's, autism. I mean, across the board, so many issues come back to that
That's right.
gut.
Well,
And then also things like hand sanitizer people are using like crazy. Like bacteria is so bad, but actually we need bacteria.
Of course.
We need to play in the dirt,
The old expression, getting your peck of dirt as a child.
Part of the
Being exposed to your...
Part
Yeah.
of the microbiome is the bacteria that exist on your skin, and without
Yes,
them, we wouldn't.
definitely.
We have a caller.
We do have a caller. Caller, you are on the air. What's your name, please?
Sally.
Oh, I see.
Sally. Oh, you're out and about by the sound of it.
Does it sound very noisy and windy and terrible?
Yeah, there's a bit of
Just
wind.
slightly.
Yeah,
Oh, dear.
that's it. Yes. This sounds like the Tuesday morning show. Swimming out to the buoy.
So per your discussion, I personally agree about the microbiome and the trigger point that issue that Stevie brings up. because I have seen healing in my son who was poisoned by an antibiotic, a very strong antibiotic, which I'm sure I've talked about before on the air because I'm so permanently traumatized by what happened.
I've never heard the story, Sally.
Well, no, it's actually the one mother who's obsessed by their children. So this is the first time this has ever happened.
It's shocking. So basically he took a very strong antibiotic and only a few pills before he started getting some very strange but not altogether unexpected, according to the pharmacist, symptoms, reactions. Only it went much further than what the pharmacist had warned. So it started with leg tendon pain behind the knees, and then it moved on to disorientation and eye difficulty focusing the eyes, and random nerve pain all over.
Wow!
I mean,
that must have been scary.
Uncontrollable anxiety. It just was like, numbness in the toes and fingers and arms felt heavy. The whole Megillah.
Oh, boy.
So no one understood. No one had a clue, i.e. doctors. They just, we took him to the ER. We went to doctors. They were just like, well, his tests are fine. But basically what we learned along the way in this journey was that he had to go on the Candida diet, which is extremely rigorous, no sugar and so forth, to get the yeast explosion to simmer down. That is, assuming he had that. But it seemed to work a great deal to get to follow that very strict diet.
And it helped ultimately.
Well, that and the trigger point part, which is a ton of acupuncture, an absolute ton, like a couple times a week, and then maintaining to once a week and so on. And this is a 4-year process.
Wow.
What he took was a fluoroquinolone, which is like Cipro or Levaquin. Those are fluoroquinolones.
Yeah.
So those are very strong. But my point is that the diet, which he's now completely abandoned and is doing things like putting milk duds in his popcorn when he goes to the movies, which causes me to almost have to go on a Valium drip. So alarmed by the digression. But anyway, he's managed to pretty much relinquish most of the symptoms. The anxiety, he says, is most readily controlled with acupuncture, and this is all tied to the gut biome, because and it affected his mitochondria, which is also what they've studied. That's what they sort of have learned, because thousands and thousands of people have had this reaction. Ruptured tendons and things of this nature. So, and all kinds of weird and terrible symptoms. And some people, I just read on the Facebook page, the fluoroquinolone toxicity group, of which I am a member, so I can keep reading and having more anxiety on my own. But no,
change your diet.
I see that a lot of people might not be understanding about that the dietary changes that are extremely rigorous can really help.
And it turns out in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Yes.
But,
Anyway, that's my story about that and why I concur with Stephen Hurwitz about that.
But I just like to ask the caller, I've observed some microevolutionary changes in West Marin amongst the animals. And caller, have you seen this? I saw a coyote in linen pants the other day. A squirrel looking at its iPhone was run over. I saw a bobcat
Charles,
attempting to get the cork out of a very flinty Chablis, which I did help that bobcat.
This is like a portrait of you and your friends, but like when you have dogs dressed up in suits suits. This is like Charles and Company at the bar.
I saw a heron pretend to have read E.F. Schumacher's Small is Beautiful, but clearly not telling the truth. So the microevolution is happening when the animals of West Marin. That's all I'm saying.
Your digressions are so charming.
Well, put the smartphone down, squirrel. That's all I'm saying. They're getting killed in big numbers going across the street playing, Candy Crush. It's
Candy Crush. Now, the other thing that my son did, which may or may not have anything to do with the gut biome, but probably in some way, is that he had his blood. He had like infusions of ozone. He had his blood run through a UV filter. He did some hardcore stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it would make him feel really terrible for a while, and then he'd feel better.
Yeah.
So he had to figure it out all by himself, and through research online and stuff, and he had to sort of, go and test different things, and he kind of attributes the acupuncture to being very effective.
Yeah. But what kind of evolution are we talking about here? I don't really, for Stevie's point, I don't really understand the evolutionary bit of
do
it.
humans adapt to this kind of toxicity? Have we been able to observe that?
That's a good point, that
Well,
the toxicity might really have an effect on microbiomes.
Well, but look at human beings, right? I mean, look at the way, of just a crazy example. It's going to sound like phrenology. But, for instance, Inuit people up in the Arctic Circle, they developed more peaked shapes to their skulls because it preserves heat better. And or the long limbs that you get in really hot climates that help radiate heat away from the center of the body. So when we look at human beings, and this is not over a huge period of time, I don't know if it qualifies as microevolution, but we do get all these kinds of changes, and or people with very light pigmentation because they were from Scotland or, I don't know, Shetland Islands or something.
I just want to read one other thing. It says our individual microbiomes are sometimes called our genetic footprints, since they help determine our unique DNA, hereditary factors, predisposition to diseases, body types, there you go, or body set points, weight, and much more.
Really? Yeah, okay.
Well, and then, so antibiotics...
Well, okay.
Sally, are you still with us? Sally?
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Thank you, Sally.
I'm going to say, yes, thank you for allowing me on the air.
Oh, good heavens. Thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Well,
You say faults or thoughts?
the use of antibiotics, I mean, aren't we seeing that they're using stronger and stronger antibiotics because maybe evolution?
Oh, well, because bacteria are evolving.
Yeah.
Yes, to resist. Resistant bacteria.
Right.
Well, I mean, they say STD rates are at an all-time high in Marin, and there's more and more talk of super gonorrhea. So much better than regular gonorrhea.
Is this real or
That's
a
real.
Yes,
joke?
across the country. Actually.
Well, California specifically is having this
you're right,
huge...
just California.
well, not just California, but well, do I need to bring up the statistics? Do you think I was just making it up?
I do.
Out of
No, you're
I
not.
didn't know.
No.
You did- Well, she claims.
Well, so...
STDs reach an all-time high in California. Marin on the upward trend. And
So what's the reasoning?
Always in the forefront.
you could say it's different attitudes toward, safe sex or something like that. But I was saying that, are we talking about microevolution in terms of these bacteria that are now getting harder and harder to treat?
Yeah, sure. Well, that's certainly an example.
Well, I think that if President Trump doesn't use protection, then why should we?
Does he or doesn't he? Do you have
No, he
a-
doesn't. That's what
We're
his
going
girlfriend
to
said.
that's
model
just-
ourselves after
It's not.
Trump, huh? That's the way to go?
I just love how this is known as a certainty. I just that's great.
It's what the girls say.
That's what
I'm not making this up.
Which girls? Any in West Marin? If you've slept with Donald Trump, call 663-8492.
No judgment here.
No judgment.
If you haven't slept with him, call.
But you'd like to call
415
Pennsylvania.
663-8492. Do call in. Give us your thoughts on microevolution.
But, Paul,
The
you seem
evolution of-
skeptical about this.
Well, I don't
microbiome.
really. I understand that bacteria are evolving. I'm not sure how your microbiome would, for example, change the
Affect
shape
our
of your
DNA?
body. For example, I mean, I could see that there was. I could see there might be some interplay between bacterial DNA and our DNA that over time, because mitochondria are basically separate organisms from us.
I think one of the points is that we're not talking, when you talk about this, we're not talking about millions of years.
Yeah, right. No, that's right. That's the so more examples, more on a bigger scale, perhaps. Trinidad guppies. When there are predators around, they're dull colored. When you put them in a pond, within 2 years, I guess that's probably one, maybe 2 generations, they become more colorful when there are no predators around. Things like that. Now, that could be phenotypic plasticity, the shape of your body or behavioral changes that happen. But they're more and more finding that it's actually, some of these changes are genetic, that as species adapt to new things, especially urban environments, man-made environments, the changes are becoming genetic.
What about lizards, though? They change their color at will.
Oh, well, yeah, but that's just what that's what they do. That's not evolution. That's not.
Well, they evolved to that point.
They evolved to the point where they were able to camouflage.
Or maybe their microbiomes are.
Yeah, so how are we going to evolve
Exactly.
to deal with the amount of pharmaceuticals that, our culture says that we must have in our body, and then we have to treat for the side effects with more pharmaceuticals,
Chemicals
and our
in the
food
environment.
sources are destroyed so that they don't have as much nutrient value as they once had. So are we able to adapt
That's the thing, is
to all of that?
it's kind of a heartening thing to see that evolution can happen over the course of years instead of centuries or millennia, but should that make us complacent about what we're wreaking on the planet? Or should we say, well, we could adapt, but maybe we should also try to
But yeah, in this case,
ameliorate the situation?
it's killing us. It's
Right.
causing exponentially greater incidences of disease across the board.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. So what should we do, Shelley? What should you do? Call 415-663-8492.
What can we do about all the stuff happening in the world? It's overwhelming.
Eat differently. I think eating differently is probably the first
Well,
thing.
it's easy for us to say eat differently because of where we live.
Yeah, she's been sitting next to me for some time. That's what I would have said. There's a class component to eating differently.
But it definitely is. Most of the foods that people get in this average market, if you shop down the center of the market and you don't go around the outside where all the real food is, and even that, if it's not organic.
Even if it's organic, I talked to a fellow master gardener, lives in Tamales, who was telling me, and again, this is the age of images of just, not being able to really deeply engage with all these images we see all the time. But he said, look at spinach. Spinach that's grown, say, in Monterey County or Central Valley, or wherever it's at, Santa Cruz County, it's just held, the soil is dead. It's just a mechanical structure to hold onto the roots, and it's fed with very saline water, which the plant sucks up and becomes big and green and beautiful.
Plump, yeah.
But there's no nutrient, or the nutrient value is so much less than something grown in living soil. So when you go to the store and you see that beautiful spinach, it looks gorgeous, but it may not have the nutrients in it. And how do I know what the difference is? Frankly, I don't.
Well,
Right, so it's giving us calories.
Organic, really.
It's giving us calories, but it's not feeding ourselves.
It's not. My brother likes to travel in the Caucasus a lot, and he said when he's there in Armenia or Georgia or whatever, he says he eats much, much less because the meat is raised locally and the veggies are raised locally, and they have a much greater nutrient density, so that you don't need as much food in order to feel nourished, in order to feel full or satisfied. But again, unless you do it yourself, you don't know. I knew a guy who grew, no, this would be telling, but he's definitely not listening, probably nor is anybody who knows him, who grew strawberries locally. And we started talking about the strawberries, and we started talking about organic beef and grass-fed beef. And ultimately said with these designations, you really don't know unless you know. You really don't
Sure.
know what's going into your veggies and into the animal products that you consume unless you have a direct engagement with them, which really is bringing our species back around to where it started again, which is to be more engaged with where its food comes from. And actually, people think, oh, I don't want to be a peasant farmer and all my time is taken up with this horrible labor. But actually, you look at what elites are attracted to now. If you see an organic farmer in this area, they've gone to a liberal arts university. If you see somebody that's really into getting back to the land, I guarantee you they come from a privileged background, almost exclusively. And so it's our ideal. You're healthier, you're out in nature, you know where your food comes from, you know how it's raised, and this is like the good life. Because for a long time, you think it's certainly of the generation, or first generations, 3-4 generations of the 20th century, the good life was removing yourself from that engagement with the physical reality as much as possible. And
convenience.
Convenience and the space age, there was a lot of optimism about
cleaner.
this. Yeah,
It's so dirty and smelly out in the country.
Well, this is a tiny tangential example, but if you look at the comparison about the way advertisements for products for women in homes were sold before and after air conditioning. Before air conditioning, the images of the home and the woman in the home was, women in the summertime on porches and sundresses, and the doors and windows are open and people are gathered around on the lawn. As soon as air conditioning comes in, it gets so creepy. It's these women in sweaters and long roll skirts on their couches with the shades drawn. It's like you don't have to be out in nature anymore because we can control the temperature. And you can always be in your little sealed container.
Well, so again, we're back to that question: is the way that we've wrapped ourselves in cling wrap, is that going to affect the way we can adapt to future changes, which are happening very quickly?
I think there's no question.
So there'll be a huge die-off is what we're talking about.
Well, a lot of people want this to happen.
Worse than that is disease. Before they die off, they're very, very ill, sometimes incapable of caring for themselves. And that's going to be a huge burden on the whole of society. So
when can we adapt to fighting cancer within our bodies without having to resort to chemo?
Well,
for example,
but you know this.
I think your diet has something to say about cancer.
Well, absolutely,
it really does.
To that point, in the movie The Corporation, which is a great Canadian documentary worth watching if anybody hasn't seen it. The already, of course, everyone's seen it already. Corporation, you can watch it for The Corporation. You can watch it for free on the internet. One of the guys who is a medical doctor says the ACA, the American Cancer Association, whatever it is, put no emphasis or money on preventative measures.
No.
They want cancer cures. Why? Because they're very expensive. That's where the money is.
Of course.
Don't try and fix somebody's diet so that they don't develop a cancer, because that's really cheap. There's no money in that. Try and come up with the most expensive possible solution to a problem.
Of course.
And we do that across fields. Like, for instance, the Rand Corporation, again, a tangent here, but one I blithely have wandered into. The Rand Corporation did an analysis in the late 60s, early 70s, something like that, about what to do about the problem of narcotics in the United States. They came up with 4 basic solutions. The cheapest and most effective was education and treatment. The most expensive and least effective was direct military intervention into the countries that produce the drugs. What did we do? The one that works and is cheap, or the one that's really expensive and doesn't work?
Well, I think we should just give it away.
Give what away?
Yeah,
Spinach.
What are you talking about?
Oh, narcotics. I'm sorry. I blame myself for this.
It's a market economy. It's a demand economy. They don't push it, as they say. People want it and demand it. And I think if you gave it away, the price would drop and there would be no incentive for people to export this stuff. And you could control the quality of what people are getting.
I think I'd say immediately that's a terrible idea. If you give it away, the demand will increase with the supply, right? But I think if you want to talk about bankrupting all of those bearded rutabagas that have poisoned the north coast of California,
you're just guessing that.
Yeah, I'm not just guessing that.
That the demand will increase with supply.
Yeah, sure.
What study do you have that
it's just common sense. If gasoline goes down to a quarter, common sense. If gasoline goes down,
are we talking about
microevolution?
Pardon me?
Are we talking about weed? You mean?
Yeah. What are you talking about?
Well, listen. Take methadone as an example. Okay.
Can we? Do you have any on you?
I mean, that is an attempt essentially to give it away, except that it's the puritanical give it away. They don't want to really give people the real thing to help them. They want to have a pretend thing that helps them, and in fact, it really doesn't, because it isn't the same thing.
Right.
Well, I just say,
Anyway,
I mean, to your point about increasing supply, if gasoline was free tomorrow, would you travel less or more?
I would travel the same.
Oh, would
It's
you?
not like I'm going to get in my car and, gee, I think I'll
Why
just
not?
drive around.
Why not?
Just because
it'd be
gasoline
free.
is-
I would.
What happens is you get a bigger vehicle that's sucked.
This
That's
is-
really
Why not? Get a tank.
This is KWMR 90.5
Well,
FM in Point Reyes
I
Station.
just want to address something that Charles said earlier. I really don't think that. I really don't think
Station
that.
break?
Oh, did you say that? I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Free drugs is going
He's
to cause
only
a
been
reduction in
to
drug
one
use.
training
Excuse me.
It's like free booze is going to cause a reduction in drinking. Do you think that's true? I mean, really.
90.5.
I just want to
KWMR.
address something Steven said. Sorry, Paul.
Point Reyes Station. And 89.9 Bolinas, 92.3 in San Geronimo Valley. KWMR is supported by Art Rogers Photography in Point Reyes Station, helping the coastal community tell stories since 1973 through portraits of families, babies, groups, marriages, milestones, agriculture, and landscapes, as well as through the Yesterday and Today series, which features family portraits captured over a span of time. More information at 415-663-8345 or at artrogers.com. And we'd also like to thank Smiley's Schooner Saloon and Hotel in Bolinas is the oldest bar west of the Mississippi and is a proud supporter of KWMR. Established in 1851, Smiley's offers newly refurbished accommodations, libations, music, and community entertainment. Event listings, advance tickets, and hotel booking information online at smileyssaloon.com. That's SMILEYS saloon.com. And another reason to get out on the green for KWMR's 8th annual Daggy Golf Tournament. This year there will be a $10,000 hole-in-one cash prize. Yes, this year's tournament is Friday, June 15th at the San Geronimo Golf Course. Registration forms for players, teams, and sponsors are available at kwmr.org. Today, we were talking about microevolution. I don't know where it's gone now, but
I'm trying to look for examples.
And
call in
people can-
12415-663-8492. Please call in.
That's the
it's just
Stephen is wrong line. If
It's
you
a
think-
wide-ranging conversation that we're having, and it sort of started out with animals' ability to species' abilities to adapt to changing environments, especially man-made environments. That was part of the thing. Some cases. Well, so now Darwin's finches, the famous finches that Darwin based his theory of evolution on partly, they actually change the size of their beaks annually, depending on the weather. If there's a drought one year, the different seeds will come out, so the beaks will change. The next year, the beaks will be a different size on the same kind of finch. Bahamian lizards have moved from a forested island to an island with just sort of hedgerows, evolve shorter legs. Plants in cities. There are plants that have developed larger seeds, the plants that have really small seeds that get blown around a lot. In a rural environment, that's fine because it's dirt everywhere, there's soil everywhere to grab onto. In cities, with lots of concrete, they get blown all over the place, and unless they find a crack in the concrete, they won't survive. So they've evolved to have heavier seeds so that they just drop straight from the plant into whatever the plant is growing in. Frogs have adapted to salty runoff from roads in roadside ponds. They have greater adaptability to salt. It goes on and on. Coyotes in U.S. cities. I mean, they're bigger than they ever were. Oh, and populations of animals that are urban are bolder. You know, they'll come closer to humans, like coyotes will. They're less afraid. They're less afraid of they're less stressed. They don't respond to stress in the same way because of all things like traffic noise. If they were stressed all the time, it would kill them basically. So they're less stressed, and they are they're more aggressive in coming up close to what could be perceived danger. Anyway, caller. Hello, caller. You're on the air. What's your name, please?
Hi, this is Gail.
Hey, Gail.
Oh, hello, Gail.
Keep it clean, Gail.
Please, for once.
Okay. Well, so I apologize because I have not been listening to the entire show. I've just been in and out, and I'm out of town. And but I wanted to just, if you've already talked about this, just let me know. But there's something else about this microevolution that I learned about recently that I thought was fascinating, just amazing. So when you talk about the microbiome, in other words, you wonder like how people can survive in so many different environments, on so many different diets, and also through feast and famine and all the different conditions that we find ourselves in. And even though there's a long scale for evolution, when we think about the humans, what happens is that the microbiome, the small bacteria that live within us, can evolve on a much quicker scale. So the microbiome actually is what evolves to adapt to the different dietary conditions or the different whatever's available. And they can do that in a matter of days or months, on a very, very short time frame, whereas obviously we may require thousands of years. So it's a remarkable interrelationship. It's miraculous, really, much broader, much more amazing than we were even began to imagine.
So their adaptation, their evolution helps us to survive. So
exactly.
That's how they're affecting us.
What about animals, though? How does that affect? We were talking about birds having smaller wings for to the microbiomes. Does that? There's a corollary there.
I don't see it. I mean, to me, that seems like a remarkable. That whole topic of this call of this show seems amazing. I was completely unaware of the changes that you were describing. This is really just one more facet of it, but I don't see how it would affect, like you say, the span of the bird's wings or anything like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think there's an interesting human one, and we sort of already touched on this, or I did rather. Which was the old phrase, "Gentlemen prefer blondes." Well, in Scandinavia and England, gentlemen prefer women or men without vitamin deficiencies, right? I mean that the attractiveness of certain traits relate to how adaptable they are to a certain situation. On the equator, not so much. Gentlemen don't prefer women with skin cancer, apparently. But it's that sort of thing where what we think of as attractive is related to how, in a micro way, we've been adapting to these conditions.
So regional evolution.
And birds can do the same thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, or lactose intolerance is a great one. Northern Europeans.
Birds have changed their plumage. A species of bird that was fairly brightly colored in cities was not so brightly colored because it would attract predators in rural areas. So it got to the city, and to attract mates more easily, the male started becoming more colorful, developing more white feathers so it could be picked out against the backdrop. Yeah, fascinating.
You also see that with birds and so many animals, that whatever they do, they just adapt to whatever. I mean, I think that's just in their DNA, that they can literally change depending on where they land or where they're living.
Yeah.
You also get evolutionary complacency, right? Think of all the flightless birds that got eaten.
Oh, yes, no predators. Yeah. And then we came along. Along came humans.
Delicious flightless birds.
Complacency.
Looking at you, quail.
This one that I put in the blurb about New York City, the mice in Central Park have this would be their microbiome. Here we are. They have developed greater immunity to aflatoxins because of peanuts that people throw away. All the visitors in the park.
They have toxins in the peanuts.
Yeah, aflatoxin it's a toxin that grows in peanuts. So they've developed a greater immunity to them, and they can also digest fats easier. So, like the junk food, all the visitors are wandering through the park, throwing the junk food wrappers away, and their energy bars, throwing the energy bars away on the ground. And the mice in Central Park have developed so that they can actually absorb the nutrients without, more easily.
Wow!
From that, and that's distinct from New York City mice.
Oh. Oh, you mean Central Park mice is distinct from the...
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. Amazing.
Well, carry on. I will see you guys later.
Thanks
you,
for
Gail.
calling in.
Good
Wonderful.
show. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gail.
663-8492, please. Do call in.
Microevolution.
Give us your thoughts about microevolution. As you said, swallows nesting under overpasses often develop shorter wings for greater maneuverability in traffic, so they can drop down and they're out and can zip around more easily. Urban birds sing at a higher pitch to be heard over traffic noise, and somebody took eggs from an urban nest of a bird that was singing at a higher pitch, a species of birds that was singing at higher pitches in the city. They took the eggs, took them to a quieter place in the country and hatched them out. And when they started singing, they were singing at sort of a midway point between an urban and a rural sparrow. So they figured out, they think that it was sort of a 50-50 mix of actual DNA change and
nature versus nurture.
Phenotypic plasticity.
Environmental.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
And they understand the change that quickly.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like for humans, the changes we're seeing are, a lot more illness.
Yeah.
And it's all due to our environmental factors, our
chemicals in the environment,
food sources.
Terrible.
All the people that have gluten, intolerance or whatever.
Roundup intolerance.
It's Roundup, exactly,
I
because
think so,
with the normal way of processing the wheat, they have a field of wheat and they spray it with Roundup just before harvesting because it makes it easier
to dry it out. Yeah.
To get the wheat off of there. And it's crazy that this is okay in our country to treat our food this way.
Well, we've always been told that Roundup is safe.
Well, when they say, talking about this, the life of the gut, this was on KWMR years ago, probably David Barsamian's show. I don't really know. But the speaker was saying that we now have Roundup-ready guts. Right, this microbiome you're talking about it's prepared to receive all of these contaminated foods.
Well, there you go. So if we can adapt to pesticides like that, I mean, it's 1940, so it's not even 100 years since glyphosate was introduced.
You can look at a graph that shows the increase in the use of glyphosate, and almost the exact same line is the increase in autism.
How interesting.
Oh, boy. But you and I agreed on this show before that it's caused by absentee parents and people not really engaged with their children. We strongly agreed on this. I recall. We have an archive.
You
we
need
can go
a
back.
spanking. Is that what it is?
This is the kind of parenting she advocates.
It's caused by people who have no children.
Spanking that's Catholic acupuncture. That's what we do to deal with our... Also, Episcopalian acupuncture, I should say.
Caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please?
Hi, this is Gail.
Oh, my gosh, sir.
No, I'm not keeping anybody else from the call.
No, you certainly not. Shoot, Gail.
My question, because now just listening to you talk about, the nutrition and the way our bodies have been affected, the amount of illness and the kinds of illness, the young people who are being affected by just so many cancers, and that's not even diabetes and heart disease and the other things that are really obviously diet related. But so then how come we haven't adapted? I guess it makes me wonder how come we haven't adapted, use the same mechanisms to adapt to these changes in our environment. I mean, I don't think there's an answer, but it felt like a question that...
Well, as Paul was saying,
it seems
it's only
like our adaptation is to go to illness, it's...
Well, as Paul was saying, we've only had
out.
4 or 5 generations since all of these byproducts of, petroleum have been, and other chemicals have been in the environment. So maybe they will, in 2200, have microevolve.
Animals adapting, to their changes. I mean, I guess a mouse generation is a lot shorter than a person. I mean, literally, we're just 2 generations, maybe 3, from the beginning of real industrial food,
Right.
So it may just take a longer time.
Big ag.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know. Who knows how long that would take? If you're I don't know, what would it be?
An evolutionary biologist.
Evolutionary biologist.
You know, if
Give
you
us a
went
call.
back to,
I hate them. If you're E.O. Wilson, come to the radio station so I can slap you.
if you went
dingbat.
Wait a
back to
minute.
a population that was
Okay,
Slapping
Thank you,
better
Gail.
than spanking.
It's acupressure. That's all I was offering E.O. Wilson. We're
what
all
about
ants.
populations before World War One? What were the ailments that that affected them?
TB,
Well,
polio.
Typhoid, cholera, but that's in cities. But I think the interesting thing, Franz Boas, who I brought up to you, everyone we talk about Franz Boas all the time in the show, the famous anthropologist, he studied turn-of-the-century populations in urban United States, and what he'd see is you'd have the first-generation immigrants, say from Italy or wherever, and then, this new American diet that they were eating, which was much more food, much richer, coming from, say, rural poverty in, Sicily or something. The next generation, they're taller, their heads are bigger, their bodies are bigger, they're heavier, in a sort of positive sense. That's how you get all these, sort of really, really tall people. But he was saying in one generation, the impact of change in nutrition, just in the size of people.
Phenotypes. Yeah.
And it's sort of true. I mean, people do get bigger if they have richer diets.
What about also the things we do now? For example, we're on our devices all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
How
told
is
you
that
squirrels.
impacting our spine?
Yes.
How's it impacting our eyes? How's it impacting our brains?
I don't think it is.
Develop a bent neck at all times. It would just be like this all the time.
Well, I don't know if it's microevolution, but to get back to our, because we agree on it, so I don't want to go over it again. But to get back to all the ways we agree about autism, if you're raised by somebody, or if you're raised by somebody who's raised by somebody now as time goes on, who has that relation, who is relating constantly to a device, like me and this laptop that I'm closing now, then, this is just nurture. This is not nature, I don't think, but you're mimicking the behaviors of the people that raise you, and considering that to sort of be, kind of normal way of interacting. And then maybe you raise children. So you have 3 generations of people watching television screens all the time, which have now turned into computer screens and then turned into these little phone things. That has to have some impact. What impact it is very controversial to say, it causes this. Like, you very strongly resisted this idea that it caused autism. But I'd say I don't want to medicalize it, but it certainly seems to me that it must have some impact on Paul, stop looking at your laptop.
So you're still holding on to this argument that autism is caused by bad parenting?
No, I'm just saying I wouldn't say autism necessarily. I would say that certain kinds of social malformation, or whatever you want to call it, or maldevelopment, are because you're coming from poorly socialized and developed parents. And so that might not be autism, technically speaking. I don't know what autism is. But I'm saying if we're talking about people's inability to communicate, inability to speak in complete sentences, to look people in the eye when they speak to them, to be able to express themselves, is super high degrees of isolation, alienation, and social
People
anxiety.
with autism who can get a little bit past all of that stuff have been worked with intensely on behavior modification techniques, and they really can't help how they are.
I'm just saying, if you're I'm not necessarily talking about autism. I'm talking about the kinds of behaviors we see based on being raised by absentee parents who are obsessed with their devices. And they want you to be obsessed with your device. I see little kids with iPads all the time. Do you know what they are? They're very quiet. And so...
Right.
So I'm not saying that's autism.
It's become a modern tool to hand a kid an iPad.
So we're evolving to be with electronics.
Right. There are
Right.
studies that indicate that African Americans, women, talk less with their children.
Well, why is that? Any particular reason?
I don't know. Culturally, they don't spend as much time speaking with their children.
Yeah, I don't know.
That was what the study.
But what I'd say, to try and narrow that down, is that you have, with psychology, you have specific categories that may be what we'll call actual diseases. But then you have the way in which contemporary life produces the symptoms of those actual diseases. And so I'm not saying that people that we commonly call narcissists or have borderline personality disorder actually have some kind of specific specific mental illness that could be identified. What I'm saying is that the way we live in the contemporary world produces the symptoms in people that are like the symptoms of those diseases. So, and I wouldn't say that this way of being raised causes autism. I don't even know what autism is. But what I can tell you is it causes people who are deeply socially anxious and do not have very good communication skills.
Right. Unless,
what's wrong with that, Shelley?
I just don't. I think there's a huge distinction between autism and people who are having difficulty in society because of how they were raised. It's completely separate.
Charles is saying that because he says he doesn't know what autism is.
Well, but
I wish you would stop talking about it.
Well, no, but you know how you cheat when these things come up? You say, well, there's a spectrum. All I'm saying is there's a spectrum.
I'm not cheating.
Oh, that is cheating, by the way.
I've spent time with people with autism, so I do know there's a spectrum because I've observed it and worked with it and interacted with it.
Is Asperger's a part of that spectrum?
Yes.
Okay. But so
I dated a guy with Asperger's. I have very direct interaction and history with people with autism.
Please, none of my exes call in and give testimony as to whether or not I have Asperger's.
Because you might. You might.
Well, no. What I'm saying is this was R.D. Laing's thing, which is that modern life causes mental illness. I'm not saying modern life causes autism. All I'm saying is that modern life may give rise to certain sets of behaviors and norms that resemble things like mental illness, things like autism, things like this disorder, that disorder. That's
okay.
it.
Yeah, I could see that.
I think that
anyway. By the way, did you know there's a London underground mosquito?
What about the pit?
That is distinct from London mosquitoes.
Well,
so, Paul, what do you think's going on?
What do I think is going on? I think rapid evolution is happening all the time, except perhaps in humans. I don't know. Really the question.
It's really hard to measure it.
It is going on with humans. Our DNA is affected by what we eat.
By radiation, right? It's in the nuclear age.
Our genetic makeup is affected, and it's being affected very rapidly.
Right.
Well, what
are
about
we adapting or are we declining because we're not adapting to that? Our bodies, you could have intake of poison foods and bad foods and lots of fat and all that.
Pharmaceuticals, vaccines.
And maybe instead of becoming obese and unhealthy, if we were adapting to that, we would be healthy on those diets. Are we not adapting fast enough to what we're doing? That's the question.
Change is happening so rapidly.
Yeah. But there are plenty of examples of people who have hideous diets who live for long periods of time. It's
true.
Rare.
Plenty of examples who had great diets and get cancer.
All those marathon runners that dropped out of whatever disease when they're 42, which I always love it when that happens. I'm sorry if it's one of your loved ones.
So when you talk about great diets, there's a spectrum there.
Oh, boy.
But what I mean is that, different people, like it's our perception that some people perceive that if they eat more vegetables, it's a better diet. But if they're not eating the
healthy vegetables,
organic vegetables, it's less better.
Sure.
And even though the organic vegetables we still can't count on,
who knows,
it's a little better, than the mainstream. So. Yeah, it's hard.
Well, I think there's another. We'll talk about depression, right? This seems to me to be a massively depressed culture, and it's always trying to deal with its depression by some kind of physical or chemical stimulation. Whether for the poor people, that's drug addiction. For people who are better off,
probably
that's
our isolation that's causing that.
Sure, addicted to pharmaceuticals, right? If you're a little better off, you have insurance, you can get access to them. But depression seems to be this tremendous thing. Yeah, I don't know. Well, are people, adapting to it?
Will we adapt?
Well, look at here's an example.
Because we are the most supremely adaptable species of all, right? We're everywhere.
Yeah.
And we thrive everywhere. Given
Sorry,
time.
Gaia, we won. Deal with it. Mother Nature, 0, Charles, 1. The other thing is take transgenderism, which may be a kind of cultural sort of moment that we're in, but that all the chemicals in the environment are causing some kind of poor sexual development of fetuses. So you're having more gender dysphoria or confusion or ambiguity
happening in many species.
So men are less manly.
Female alligators being born now.
Oh,
in certain parts of the bayou.
I believe that's a plot to an alligator erotica, which I think is it's niche.
So yeah, there's all this. If we can't adapt fast enough to the world that we have created, then well, that's it for us, I guess. I don't know. In toto, no, probably not. There will be survivors. The human race will carry on because, as we are adaptable, and our microbiomes will adapt, and our brains will help us find a way out of the damage we're causing. But
ultimately, we have to go back to become hunter-gatherers. I mean, that if the human species wants to survive, we'll be hunter-gatherers, perhaps with technology that can be useful. But
hunter-gatherers. I mean, the problem is you'd have to take the world population down by 6 billion people, 7 billion. I mean,
that's right. It will.
I don't know. I mean, I think that it's a really dark way of viewing the world.
That's
it's
true.
Apocalyptic.
We have a caller. Caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please?
Hi, thank you for taking my call. This is Johnny Moore. I'm actually in a car wash right now. And I'm going through the car wash, and I'm thinking about this evolution thing, and I'm just wondering, will I be the same as I was when I entered about 4 or 5 minutes ago?
You might be cleaner.
Roll down the windows and start drinking the fluid and see how you feel.
You will be subtly different, I think.
That's what I'm thinking, too, you know.
Well, we've certainly evolved to survive noisy environments like car washes and cities.
Well, it's just no different than the birds, you know, where they move the eggs. I guess kind of like, you know, I guess with people, I mean, I've noticed we can adapt to darn near anything.
Yeah.
Turn the volume up, we turn the volume up some way, or we turn our listening down. Here we go. We're going to go through the blower part now.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Here it comes.
This is a remote feed, live.
There's light at the end of this tunnel.
It's almost like being reborn.
John is having an out-of-body experience. Back to Artie Lang. He's having a rebirthing experience there at the car wash.
Thank you, Johnny.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
Love yourself. Bye-bye.
Call in again.
Hooray!
Well, this has been Let's Talk one more time. You've been listening to Let's Talk. Thank you to Stephen and Shelley and Charles.
Thank you, Paul.
It's been my pleasure.
KWMR does not take a stand on any of the issues raised by Charles Schultz. Opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts and callers and don't necessarily reflect the views of KWMR, its board of directors, underwriters, or members. And inshallah, we shall be back next week, all going well. Meanwhile, this. Thanks, everybody.